I've been using the Xperia 1 Mark 6 for just over a week now as my daily driver. Phone switched over from the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and I want to talk about it because, well, one, I love the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 6. Of course, I love the Pixel 9 series phones as well. But just having a moment to reflect here, what are some of the things that I like about the Sony that I appreciate over the Pixel phone? Well, first and foremost, I love the form factor. Now, the Pixel 9 Pro XL is very akin to the iPhone 16 Pro Max. It's very big, it's bulky, it's heavier. I love the dimensions. I love the lightweight form factor on this phone. It's easier to use one-handed, and I really like having the fingerprint scanner built into the power button. Now, one thing you will miss with this phone is it doesn't have facial recognition, which I actually don't care about. And because I prefer using the fingerprint scanner. Even on my Pixel 9 Pro XL, on my Pixel 9s, I use the fingerprint scanner over facial recognition. Actually, most of my phones, I don't even register facial recognition because it annoys me, and I just prefer to use the old-fashioned fingerprint scanner. And the fingerprint scanner in the Sony is very good. So I like the form factor, I like the dimensions, I like how lightweight it is, I like the fingerprint scanner. Another thing that I actually really like too is the battery life. So the battery life on the Pixel 9 Pro XL is good, but the battery life on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 6 is better. Like, this thing is basically impossible to kill in one day, and it's really nice being able to have the Snapdragon 8 Generation 3. In addition to that, you're running a very stock version of Android. It doesn't have all the fancy stuff built into it. And it's funny saying that because the Pixel was always synonymous with being stock Android, but really it's not so much stock Android anymore because there's so much smart stuff they built into it, so many enhancements, Material U, and all the Gemini stuff. It feels like it's always trying to get me to use something else. Something's always trying to pop up, or hey, do this. You want to use Gemini? Here's the recommendations. I really like plain Jane. I like very simple. And that's one nice thing you get with the Sony Xperia Mark 6. It's basically as plain Jane as you can get. It reminds me a lot of actual stock Android that we had over the past couple of years. And it's really nice. Using this phone, the haptics are good. It's got great speakers. The speakers on here are definitely better than the Pixel. Honestly, I think this phone has the best speakers of any phone this year. They made them like 50% louder, 50% better, and they're both front-facing firing speakers. So when you're using it, you're holding it for content. When you're watching videos and you're playing games or doing any of that stuff, it sounds really nice. And the screen's nice and bright too. I mean, it's not as bright as it is over on the Pixel, but I really do like the screen here. Of course, one of the downsides is it is only Full HD Plus. It's 1080p. They got rid of the staple 4K screen to turn it into a OLED screen that has the adaptive refresh rate. For whatever reason, they could never work it out with 4K. I don't know why they couldn't work it out with Quad HD Plus, because obviously that's something other manufacturers can do. We see it with the Pixel, we see it with the Samsung phones. So I think that is a little bit of a negative here, but being able to throttle down from 1 hertz up to 120 hertz, that's nice. Of course, that's nothing that's unique to this phone that's on many other phones. Also, the expandable SD card slot is really nice. Having the dedicated headphone jack is nice, and it's for very different reasons, right? So it's not just because you can plug in some headphones to it. So if you like to use your old school headphones, you want to plug in the headphone jack, you can do that. But as a content creator, if you want to be able to record something, if you want to plug in a microphone to it, you can plug in a dedicated microphone to the headphone jack. And also you can use it as a monitor as well, so that way you can, hear yourself while you're recording stuff with the phone, and better for setting levels and adjustments and things like that, especially if you're doing any sort of editing. So that's really nice. I like the camera app. Now, the camera app is a little bit more complex than what you get with the Google Pixel phone, but one thing that's also really nice that I like is the continuous zoom. So you have the continuous zoom on here. It's the same as basically a optical zoom on a camera, and this is something only Sony has been able to figure it out. Samsung, to try and fix this issue, basically they have a 3 times and a 5 times telephoto now. They have 2 different telephoto cameras. They got rid of the 10 times, dropped it down to a 5. So you have the primary camera 1 times, and then they call it the optical digital zoom quality for 2 times. You have a 3 times optical, and then of course you kind of have a digital optical for 4 times, and then 5. But you have to switch back and forth between lenses too when you're doing that. and you get camera shift or certain things. So what's really nice with this one is you have that 3.5 to 7.1. You have a continuous optical zoom, just like you're turning the little reticle thing on a DSLR camera, and it's really nice. And you also have the telephoto macro, which is really cool too. So there's a lot of different things in here that I really like whenever it comes to the camera. The selfie camera is not as good on here. I wish Sony would beef that up a little bit. It's good, it's satisfactory, but it's not as good as the Pixel phone. And I think the Pixel phone has the best selfie camera out of any phone on the market right now. It's really, really, really good. And also the primary camera is good too. The primary camera on here, we've got that XMOR sensor, which is nice, and it's very complementary with the camera app in here because you can go on hands-on, pro mode, all that stuff. I really like the natural representation of colors on here. Everything that you get with the cameras on the Sony phone is very true to life, is very color science accurate, and it's very natural, as opposed to that over-processed look that you get whenever it comes to the Pixels. Like, the Pixels look great, and they've got all that great computational photography, but a lot of people complain that they look over-processed. So if you don't like that over-processed look, even though it looks very, very good, I think that the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 6 gives you a better, more natural look, and the bokeh is actually very good on here too. So there's a lot of complementary stuff in the camera that goes along with it. And for people who don't like the Pixels, and I know a lot of people don't like the Tensor chips. I hear it every time I talk about it. It's a mid-range chip. It's a budget processor. It's a Samsung Exynos chip that they threw in there. Look, none of that stuff treads water. But a lot of people still hang on and like the whole Snapdragon thing. So if you want a Snapdragon 8 Generation 3 and you value that more than you do a Tensor chip, then you're going to be very happy because, ta-da, it has the Snapdragon 8 Generation 3. Also, what's really nice, and of course Apple copied this, is you have an actual dedicated shutter button. And I love the dedicated shutter button on here. I was taking a lot of photos. I was at my son's football game the other day. I was taking photos with it. And it's so nice having that dedicated shutter where you can treat your phone just like a portable in-your-pocket DSLR camera. So there's a lot of stuff to like here. And there are things, of course, that I do miss. I mean, I do miss having a very good 5G signal. The modem in the Pixel is very good. Inside here, you do have a good modem, but the problem is because it's not whitelisted with AT&T, not whitelisted with T-Mobile, Verizon. I have found a way to get 5G, doing some workings with the internals on here, doing some code stuff, but yeah, it's still not the greatest. So whenever you go through spotty areas, maybe some antenna transitions, I've had phone calls drop. So there are some sacrifices using this in the States. Also, you're only guaranteed 3 operating system version updates. You're not getting monthly security patches necessarily. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. They are a little bit behind usually, but they're better than they used to be. So that's nice. But yeah, it's one of those things where with the Google Pixel phone, you get those reliable monthly updates, you get those quarterly feature drops, you get 7 years of support, 7 years of operating system updates and security patches. That is really nice, and it's something you take for granted. And also the call assistant. I really love the Google call assistant with the call screening. That's something that's really nice too. So, I mean, there are some things that I like about the Pixel. Of course, I do love the Pixel phones, but my 2 favorite phones this year, definitely the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 6 and the Pixel 9 Pro XL. And I wanted to talk about it because, one, nobody ever talks about the Sony phones, especially now that this one's not available in the US. It's kind of expensive, and you have to find a way to get it from overseas. Like order it maybe off of Amazon. They have some now. Get it off of eBay. I got mine off of Swappa right after the phone came out. So there's definitely trade-offs. There are sacrifices you have to make. Is it a very enjoyable phone? Yes. I love this phone. Definitely the best phone that I think Sony has ever made. There's a lot of things in here that you can't get in other phones, like the expandable storage, the dedicated shutter button, that continuous zoom camera, the headphone jack, the built-in fingerprint scanner into the power button. There's a lot of good things here, and I hope that Sony is going back to the drawing board and kind of redoubling their efforts to try and give us an Xperia 1 Mark 7 experience next year. I hope it comes back to the States, or I hope that even at some point they come out with an unlocked global version that would be supported by the carriers here. But the writing on the wall there is not very legible. It's nothing on there. It's nothing I can look at and say, hey, this is going to change, this is going to turn around. Sony, by virtue of, I guess, a lot of other investments and wanting to be able to have a name out there in the smartphone segment, they continue to make phones, but it's very evident that they're not getting a lot of traction. So here's the thing. I like it. I really enjoy it. For me, this is a fantastic phone, and I love using it. but it's not a phone that I recommend for a lot of people for a lot of those reasons. Network compatibility, long-term support, regular updates, and things like that. But if you gloss over those things and you like all the other stuff I've talked about and the other videos I've made about the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 6, then there is a lot to like here. It's a very good phone. And if you can get over the fact that it's not a 4K screen anymore, I know that really does chap some people, and some people are not very happy about that. I was very upset about it at first, but then I got it, started using it, and since day one taking it out of the box, like, the screen is beautiful. The best Sony screen we've ever used. Is gorgeous, it's nice, it's bright, and just having that little bit extra width on here makes a really nice experience, but they still manage to keep it very lightweight and a very thin profile and a thin form factor. So that's all I got for this video. Just some thoughts after having used it. I believe 8 days ago is whenever I switched. Here in a couple of days, I'll have my final video. I've been taking a lot of pictures with this, so that's something you're going to stay tuned for, so you can see some of the camera comparison stuff, because a lot of folks want to know how good is the camera on the Sony versus how good is the camera on the Pixel. And I'll have the answer for you in a couple of days when I come back with my video specifically addressing that stuff. But I just wanted to offer some feedback and let y'all know some of the things, my thoughts and feelings about the stuff that I really like about this phone, having switched back and not having used the Pixel for over a week now. So that's all I got. Any questions, comments, gripes, concerns, complaints, all that stuff, of course, go to the comments section. I'll do my best to get back with you. If you enjoyed the video, if you want to see more of this stuff, please hit the like and the subscribe button and the little notification bell if you want updates when new videos come out. And as always, thanks for being here. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys next time.